Thank you so much for joining us on Let the Healing Begin podcast. I'm your host, Asia, and today we have Christoph Morrow on with us. How are you doing, Christoph?
I'm doing really, really well today, actually.
That's
I've
good.
been taking it easy for
Uh,
it's my one day off.
Oh, that's good.
Mm.
So, where are you from?
I'm actually originally from Houston, Texas. I grew up like in the country outside of that, and then when I left for the Navy, I've been all over the country since then. Shakespeare, Shakespeare.
Okay. Thank you for your service. So, how
Oh
long?
yeah,
I'm sorry. How long did you serve on the Navy?
a little over a year. Then I had Tourette's, right? So I had a what looked like a seizure, but it made me not deployable anymore. So
Okay.
I ended up trying to go to school immediately after that.
Okay.
Shakespeare. Shakespeare. Mhm.
So let's go back to your childhood. Tell me what was that like for you?
Oh man. Oh God. Okay. Well, it was really my goodness. I have few memories from that time. And that's a product of the abuse, I think. That's what I've been told anyway. I had a really rough childhood, actually. My dad was really violent, and he's an alcoholic, and my mom is sort of enabled that. And like I remember, I these things like because I've had these discussions, I've had to ruminate on these things and reconsider them, and then I'm remembering things like times when I knew my mother was doing something wrong, and I would say, I'm gonna tell dad, and she would say, if you tell your dad this, I'm gonna tell him you did this, because she knew it would get me hurt. Like he would hurt me. Um, and I, this is like there's I don't know. There was so much of that. I had to move back and forth between my parents after they divorced because neither were equipped to help me. They had their own struggles on top of being so antisocial to the point where like you think I can't even have a relationship with them for it's uh and also just my father's the most boring person I've ever met in my life. I mean, and anyway, my and so moving back and forth, it was really a struggle to develop friendships and you develop a kind of chronic transience, right? And so I mean, think about the notion when you move into a space, you generally are setting up with all of the things that describe who you are, your personality. So posters and just like everything that you do to decorate your space to make it your own. I never did that, and so I didn't even realize that basically I've been living. I mean, I actually just put my first poster up a few days ago. So just to kind of make tangible my that I had done something, and now I have my own space. Shakespeare.
Congratulations on taking that step.
Mm.
Um, was that hard for you to do, or did that like bring back any memories like in the midst
Yeah.
of, hanging that up and stuff?
Yeah, it makes you, yeah, it really does make you have to like to confront that a lot of the stuff because the realization is quite wounding, that when I realized that I had like nothing in my room that said who I was except for my books. But those are, those have function. They're not something that's just purely decorative. Um, and so when I had that realization, I was like, I have to do something about this now. So I bought a poster. Like I was gonna buy a Christmas tree, but I bought a poster instead because that's more permanent.
I'm very proud of you for that.
Oh,
Um,
realization.
so growing up, were you an only child?
I wasn't. I was actually the third kid born. And out of four, I have a little brother and I have two older sisters, and they had a lot going against them too. All of my siblings. And so I was actually the first to graduate high school, and I barely did that. And if people, if whoever's listening, you read my work, I think you'd be surprised by that, maybe. I barely. I think I graduated like fifth from the bottom of my class in high school.
And you know what? That's okay. At least you walked, you know?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did.
So let me ask you this, like growing up, having to endure the abuse and stuff, would you guys as siblings like ever discuss that at all?
Yeah, it's funny, because my brother and I have discussed it at length and considerably, like and tried I think tried to make sense of like how we were still upset about it. And you can never really there's no way I think to make that to be certain of that. Closure is so like closure to an extent that actually has a kind of switch in your mind, like that effect. To get that far is quite extraordinary. Like that's only happened to me one time in my whole life where I've had closure and I was like, oh, that's what that feels like. It was very stark. And but my siblings, we don't. Uh, it's really in these moments. Uh, it always comes when you least expect it. We're having a discussion about something else, and then then we think about how my sister had her head like in the refrigerator and got smacked with a fridge door. While she was looking in the fridge. And like just a lot of stuff, and it's really when we talk about it too. Uh, what really brings me the most despair is like thinking about hearing them whenever because I got it the worst, like by far. Like I was probably 80% of the beatings, like compared to my other siblings. Like they collectively were 20%. And but the worst memories for me were when they tried to help me, when they tried to stick up for me, and they were begging, and then to hear them when he would leave the room, he would chase them, and then screaming like, and that hearing them is like I still hear them, and I can't hear a baby crying or kids crying. For the same reason I fucking excuse me, I have a panic attack. Mm, immediately.
Yeah, I understand that. Have you ever like sought out therapy or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I have to attend. I attend therapy rather regularly, almost every week or every 2 weeks, and that's not even that, and oftentimes I literally have to call the crisis line because I have no other resource, and often and frankly the quality of my suffering really shouldn't. I should try to discuss that with a friend. It can be really taxing emotionally. I've learned.
Absolutely. And you know what? I don't think that we realize how deep trauma like settles within us.
Hmm.
Especially like those of us that have been traumatized as children and then grow up to have our own children. Like
Hmm.
we have to be really aware of the things that we've gone through in order to
Hmm.
repeat those same cycles with our children.
Hmm.
Because it's so easy to repeat that because that's all we know.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't even sometimes you don't even yeah, like you don't know the behavior is problematic in the first place. And I it's I really I just agree with you. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not fun. It's not a fun situation.
absolutely. So let me ask you this, like growing up, um, did you ever feel any resentment or do you feel any of that now?
Well, I think I do because I think any child of that's the product of bad parenting. They like the notion it's difficult to reconcile that anyone else in the world could love you if your parents didn't, because I mean it is it destroys your self-worth, and you live in that poverty of self-worth, and it's really it's hard to not project that for on every relationship in the future, which is difficult for me to do. Is something I contend with a lot.
Yeah, it is hard. It's crazy how how important our foundational years are, and how much that contributes to the adults that we become, right? Like our
Yeah.
standards and our values, and just how
Hmm.
we view ourselves. Let me ask you this. So let's say we have a listener that maybe, has a similar background as you. What would you say to that listener in order to, like a person that's just having a hard time just trying to come to terms with that?
Hmm. Um, well, you have to come to terms with the fact that you're never going to get over it all the way. It's going to always bother you. I have seen 80-year-old men crying, telling me their dad didn't love them. And, you know what I'm saying? And you would think like by that age, those memories would have just been wholly extirpated by just all the other ones that would replace it. But no, they just, like you said, they're very foundational. And the thing is that these sins against you, they collect in your body in a really peculiar way. They find ways to manifest, and like for example, if you get hit on the back, whenever you hear something similar to a sound, like maybe someone approaching you from the back, they hit you hard enough that you're gonna have that same kind of, your muscles in the back are gonna tense up. Think about like if you were like me, for example, I every few seconds, every 10 or 15 seconds, I have to check my body because I'm so tense all the time. I don't even realize it. And you don't realize it. You have to really listen to your body. You have to like that there's a whole thing like people think you're relaxed, but like just lay down tonight, and when you lay down, just really try to take a moment to figure out if there's anything contracting in your body, because you're gonna realize suddenly like you are doing this in bed, or like you're stiff, and that's part of the trauma. Like that's part of it. Is actually just being so rigid.
Yeah, probably like a what's the words I'm looking for? Like that child wanting to be protected, or like just
Hmm.
curling up in that space.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, so how old were you when you got out on your own?
Oh man. Well, uh, I was probably about 20, 21. Uh, I moved around a lot after the Navy. I lived with different families that I paid rent to. Um, uh, so yeah, and then that's when I raised the baby for that was fun. That was fun. It was a learning experience. Yeah, but it was, yeah, taught me a lot about.
So let me go back a second because I meant to ask you this a moment ago. So like growing up while you were going through all this, did you have any family or friends or anyone that knew like that or that was aware of what was going on?
That's so funny that you asked that, because I, so many times, so many people, so many adults. I I'm a storyteller. I'm a writer now, right? So storytelling is comes very naturally to me. So I'm talking like I would tell them, like I could describe it and tell them what was happening, and they would listen and they would pity me, and that was it. Or sometimes they would weaponize it. So, well, like I remember I had a teacher, Miss Stolly. She told me, she, she, uh, she knew what my dad was like, and uh, and she told me if I didn't start behaving or something, she was gonna call my dad. And then she did, and I got it really bad that night too, and I hated her forever after that. It felt like a mortal betrayal. It was
Yeah.
awful. It was awful.
I'm so sorry you had to go through that. And then the fact that like people are weaponizing it,
Yeah,
and to throw back at you, as like a threat.
it's
That's
insane. To a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, like
yeah.
that's sadistic. That's a level of psychopathy that I don't think I'm even qualified to be in the same room with, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
When your mother would used to do that to you, would you ever feel any resentment to her?
honestly, that's another component of abandonment, right? They say that there's abandonment, the traditional abandonment, which is like just leave, and then there's the abandonment that forms that insecurity because they didn't protect you when they should have. It's the same. So it's like it's the same thing, I think. It's in terms of like it's sort of physiological, like how it affects your brain and stuff like that. It's really damaging, especially after years and years and years of trying uh to correct that and have a better relationship, and being unable to do that because the reason why they failed you is because they're not worthy of being around you, you know?
Yeah.
And so like you're gonna experience that
And you
disappointment.
know what, oftentimes like the one of the biggest misconceptions is that like just because we have no control over the family or the loved ones that we're born to, right?
Yeah.
One of the biggest misconceptions is that because I'm born into this family, like I belong in this family,
Yeah.
or these
Yeah.
people, like it's sad, but there are some mothers who are don't have an attachment to their children.
And so I just don't I honestly yeah, I'm not really sure how convinced I am of the phenomena to begin with. You know, when I consider like how many parent like kids I've seen my and adults my age who are like discussing the fact that their parents are kind of terrible or were terrible,
Yeah.
and that most people are like that, and it's like maybe 2 out of 10, maybe between 2 and 3 out of 10 people have good parents, I think, like decent, that truly work in good faith and are emotionally like make themselves emotionally available and financially available. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, good parents are a blessing.
Yeah.
Um, so like when you got out on your own, how did you feel like leaving that whole situation and then stepping out on your own?
Mm. Well, I think uh I think like a lot of things, especially when you're young, uh you're used to you have your stimulus is regulated, and so like you can't go to any all these different places and do all these different things because you have to go to school and then you go to home and then you got to do the dishes and then you got to right. But so like whenever you go out on your own and you do have that agency and you can do anything you want and go anywhere you want, I feel like it's a lot like jumping into a big, like one of those polar dives where you go into the super cold water. So like you jump into the super cold water, it's like that. So like you, and so basically it's a lot to it's impossible really to process, I think, everything during that time because it's so much stimulus, so much more than you're probably accustomed to, and it's just very overwhelming. And I think that's what a lot of people are experiencing, like just generally when they go out on their own. And so that initial shock is going to be sustained until you grow accustomed to it, I guess.
Absolutely. So tell me what the Navy was like for you.
The Navy was, man, it was a wild time. Like honestly, it's so funny. The kind of stuff that just becomes normal. It's so weird. It's like just honestly, it's a lot of stuff that is really gross you have to live close quarters with people for like months, and you just grow very comfortable with each other after a while. It's really funny. Um, anyway, after the after boot camp and A school, I was stationed in Jacksonville, Florida, at Naval Air Station there. And it was actually really lovely. It rains every day at 4 p.m. Since it was my first duty station, like it was actually the first time I would have like I was member to the actual U.S. military and I'm doing my job. And so I have, outside of my work hours and any kind of hours where I'm on the duty roster, which is like cleaning and all that stuff you do. Uh, uh, Outside of those things, you can do whatever you want. And man, did those kids do whatever they wanted. Oh my goodness. It was wild.
Yeah.
Man, I tell you, it was wild. And I tell you, actually, the funniest thing I remember is that it's really hard to order a pizza when you live on a military base. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Think about it. You gotta get delivery drivers gotta come through the gate, and they gotta somehow. I don't even know. Yeah. It's actually a pain. It's really a
Yeah.
pain. But it's really fun to uh get to know like the personality of the branch of each branch because they do have their. It's really distinct. It's kind of funny. I think that the Navy is full of adventurous nerds, right? And so, and then the Air Force is full of lazy nerds. We don't call it the Chair Force for nothing, right? Marines are insane, and then the Army, there's some amalgam of everything, amalgamation of everything. So, they're yeah, it's just a lot of weird team building. So it's fun.
So tell me, what was like, what's one of your favorite memories from being in the military?
Hmm. Oh man. Um. Okay. Well, first of all, there was President Obama came to the base, uh, and that was really fun because I saw him in Dallas, like a year before when he was still trying to get he was trying to get the Democratic nomination. He was going against Hillary Clinton, and that was in 2008. And then my other one. So in boot camp, they have a you have to have somebody sing the cadence when you march. And they don't just let anybody do that because this person is going to be singing and we're going to be passing in front of officers like admirals and stuff that are walking around on the base. And so like you can't just have anybody. So they had us audition and I swear to God, you know what I sang in front of the drill sergeant? They call them drill sergeants, but they're actually called RDCs, recruit division commanders. So I sang in front of the three drill sergeants. I sang "I'm Yours" by Jason Mraz,
Did you?
and so, and I'll never forget the dude, the drill sergeant that was big. He's like 6 foot something. He's real bulky. He just looks at me, and he had this really deep voice, like if Vin Diesel smoked cigarettes like his whole life. You know, he's like, "That's good." He said, "That's good," and that was that. And then he's like, "Next," and he pointed like that, and then, I ended up actually getting it, and so, that was a fun thing. I just thought it was it's a funny memory.
That's good. So, did you build a lot of friendships like being there?
Oh yeah, well, it's one of those things. It's like, I think that they have only slightly more weight to them than a traditional friendship. Because there's the service component, right? And it's like a shared thing. Like you've done the stuff that's hard, like both of you, and yeah. The thing is that, but they're just as like, you're like trying to reconnect. Like it's hard to do that, just like it is as you get older, and just in general.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
So let me ask you this: are your parents still alive?
yeah,
They are. Have they
I think
ever
so.
apologized for you to you? No?
No, no.
Do you feel like that will bring you closure?
Uh, hmm. I don't know. I don't expect either of them to apologize because that's just not. They would have done it by now.
Yeah.
The reason, like for me, it's funny because I put up with a lot of stuff. And the last time I spoke to my father, he called me a stupid POS. Yeah, that was the last thing, and I just cried after I hung up, and the reason, and I still had a relationship with my mother for a while, but then I wrote this book, right? And I was only about 50,000 words into the book, in terms of writing it. And 50,000 words, if anybody doesn't know, is the minimum length to be considered a novel. Like a full-length novel is 50,000 words. So I had written a book, and that was my lifelong achievement. I've always wanted to write a book. I've won awards photography and journalism and stuff like that, and fiction and poetry, but I wanted to write a real book, and I did. And I wrote a book and I sent it to her, and she had it for months and she just never read it. Like there is a joke. Isn't there a joke about parents? You have mothers, like the only person you have a face only a mother could love. Oh,
Yeah.
your mom's the one that is your mom the only one that's gonna show up to your comedy set, like your stand-up set, and like who's your biggest fan? Your mom? No, I don't have that even. I had like I when I describe people, my personality that I contend like the personality failures that I have, the flaws, which they are flaws. I try to manage them. Um, is I had an Andy Bernard upbringing. If you watch The Office, Andy Bernard is the guy who his parents like had no respect for him and had no interest in anything he did or and whether or not he was successful. They mocked him openly actually, and he said and when his coworkers overhear him through a baby monitor, they turn it off and they say, you know, if I had parents like that, I think I would be really like that too. He's very braggadocious, like you know, he's trying to compensate for the notion that he doesn't have a cheerleader, right? I'm the same. I actually wrote a poem about it. It's a, but I'll think about it later. I'll figure it out. Yeah,
You know what? So, like, one thing, like, I'm very proud of you, like, for not like continuing to take yourself back through that cycle, you know? Like, I know you said that you had a relationship with them, but the thing about it is, like, when we do, like, those of us that do have parents that just are not supportive of us, or, you know, if it's traumatizing us every time we deal with our parents, like, it's okay to step away, you know, from trying to maintain that relationship. Like, it doesn't have to be a bad end. And of course, we want to respect our parents because, you know, we're supposed to respect our parents, but that does not mean that we have to
hmm
maintain a relationship, you know, if it's
hmm
traumatizing for us. And so, like,
yeah,
not long ago, it was something that God was speaking to me about. Like, sometimes, you know, like, we just don't like get born and birthed into families
yeah,
that may accommodate us in those ways, but you know, he will send people down the line, you know, who will fill those types of voids in our lives. They may not be like biological, you know,
yeah.
family, but you know, there may be a motherly figure or, you know, a fatherly figure, or, you know,
hmm
he will send who he needs to send to fill that void so that we don't have that lack, you know, because he knows that we're still human and we still have those needs, you know. So I think that it's awesome that you're taking a stand on, you know, like your well-being just overall, you know.
Yeah, it's actually well, I think a lot of people are afraid, the only reason that I was able to do it is that because of my condition, I'm always going to have income because it's a disability. But a lot of people might need their parents later. And a lot of millennials, I think, are struggling, and they're like trying to, you know, reconcile that they want to be separate and not in no contact, but they can't do that because they might be homeless then, and you know, they'd
Yeah,
weaponize that against you, probably.
absolutely. And you know what? That's something that I went through growing up too. Like, you know, so I know you mentioned like being in the military that you had something that came off like a seizure. So did you have like prior health conditions, or is that like when you
Mm.
initially found out about something going on?
Yeah, that was my first experience with it, and it really freaked me out because, you know, I had never been any kind of sick before. I didn't have anything. I mean, I thought I didn't. I had ADHD and OCD and anxiety and depression. I didn't know that, but I didn't have anything like that was visible, any kind of visible disability or anything. And so it was strange to go from, oh, my stomach hurts, I'm gonna stay home from school, to being like, oh, you're disabled now. It was like, wait, hold on. So like, because so like they didn't find out. I wasn't diagnosed until I was like 26. But so I had three of those episodes, and then I at back to back over a 3 day period while I was in the ICU, and then I spent, and then I had it was episodic after that, so I only had like one every couple of years or something, and then it started to become regular, and persistent.
So what is your health condition, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, I have Tourette's syndrome, and
Okay.
it's for anyone that doesn't know, it's a syndrome is a pattern of symptoms that appear, but the underlying cause of them is unknown. And so Tourette's is really it's like I like to describe it as like a river with eight mouths, and it's pouring all into one space and filling it up over and over and over again. Like because it's OCD. I have OCD that very much enables it, and because it makes me ruminate and obsess about and that causes me to have tics. And then I have ADHD, and for reasons that because it makes me impatient, irritable, and a lot of other qualities that aren't very social, and and anxiety and depression, which obviously I don't have to expand on that because everyone knows what that's about. And so these things like really truly make it really because my in the same way that I can't regulate my hands, my body, and what I say, I cannot regulate my emotions like that. It's really hard for so like I experience really intense extremes, like to the point where I become like fixated on the notion of self-annihilation, right? Because it's just that's like even and it could be that my blood sugar is low. Like that's how sensitive my brain is, and I have to contend also with the fact that I have a great deal of trauma that informs it. It informs that anxiety and that emotional dysregulation. So the world is very hostile to me on top of that. So it feels that way anyway, catamaran. But it feels like a different, I literally don't feel like the same person. And I don't even, like, it's funny because I don't even remember, like, when I have episodes where, like, it's really intense, I don't remember really, like, what it's like. I just remember feeling it really intensely. And, and so, like, it creates problems for me. And it's generally just something that I, like, but the thing is, forgiveness is the most important component of this, of all of, like, the treatment and whatever, right? You have to tell yourself, like, it's okay to make mistakes. Like you believe in relentless kindness, even if you sometimes fail. And it's important to, um, because your mental health is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. So whenever you feel like, and that's the other thing, the thing is, when you have anxiety, depression, and all these like illnesses that contribute to like someone's behavior, especially when they are driven to an emotional extreme by the world around them or whatever, uh like, oh my goodness, I forgot what I was gonna say. um when they're driven to an emotional extreme, oh, you have to realize that you are being truly symptomatic of an illness. Like it truly is an illness. It's not your person, it is not your character that's flawed. You are not a flawed human being. You have a flawed brain. That's not the spirit of you, and the spirit of your goodness is separate and distinct from the what your brain is incapable of regulating. And I just want people to realize, like, I get frustrated when I see things like that when people even work in good faith and they're trying to better themselves, and if they make mistakes, it's like they deserve to be exiled from society. I don't believe in that. I don't believe if someone truly is with their lucid moments trying to make the world a better place, and they're otherwise a great, wonderful person. You can't, it's just absurd. It's absurd to apply that's that very that condemnation, truly.
Absolutely. I love that. We need to be nicer to ourselves and to others, you know.
Yeah.
Life is hard and things happen. And we're people, like we make mistakes, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so often, it's so rare, truly, that people are being malicious. Like it's really a lot of people, even the worst, like not, some of the worst people, certainly are malicious and they're selfish. But others, antisocial behavior is really a product of trauma. It's a product of, it's something that we need to be more receptive to. Like the notion, yeah, I just there's so many things that
Yeah,
coincide with that social diagnosis, right? But yeah.
absolutely. So let me ask you this. What made you get into writing?
Oh wow. So, so for me, I was 13, I think, and I was in a first period, and we had to write a letter to soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so I considered that a very solemn thing. So I wrote the best letter that I could, and inspired and informed by what I knew about liberty and about valor, and about sacrifice, um, and suffering. And I handed it in, and I didn't think anything else of it. So, but at lunchtime, in the middle of the day, I was swarmed by a bunch of kids at lunchtime that were like, "Your letter was so beautiful. Miss Spree has been reading it to every class." And it felt, while I was doing it, while I was composing the letter, it felt like music. It really, it really did. I just remember it felt like I was getting, like I was in a tide of notes, like and it just really transformed. Like it was an awakening. It really was, in every sense of that, in the way that people use that. It was an awakening. And she stopped me when I approached her, my teacher, and she said, it was so amazing. It was so beautiful. I want to publish it in the newspaper." And actually, the only reason I believed all of this was because there was a kid that that hated me, and even he was like, "Yo, your letter was dope." I was like, "Okay, all right," you know. That's what certified that for me. It was really
Yeah.
funny. It's really funny.
And you know what? It sounds like you have a gift in writing. Like that's one of your gifts
Mhm.
that God has blessed you with, you know?
It's really the most important thing to me. When I describe it to people, I say I love it more than the sum of my love for all other things.
See,
And
that right there sounds like the first line of a poem or something.
that's, yeah, it's from my, yeah, yeah. And there's so many. I actually write so many poems. There's poems and songs and all kinds of stuff, because I really do love uh, to because John Steinbeck, one of the greatest American writers ever. He wrote Grapes of Wrath, for people that know, Of Mice and Men, East of Eden, and a bunch of others that you're probably familiar with. He said his whole mission as a writer is to help people understand one another. I share in that. That's also mine. It means everything to me that I want to. I've received so many beautiful things, messages from people. One person actually told me that even if I did nothing else for the rest of my life, that I made my time on Earth worth it. Like I've never, unprompted, I didn't. They just told me that, and someone else told me that they didn't used to like reading, but then
Yeah.
they read my book because they didn't think they were good at it. But then they read my book. If they could read my book, they're good at reading. Because I taught my whole time, like there's the last sentence that I wrote in this passage whenever someone very, very dear to me was arrested, and they suffer from uh one of the most serious mental illnesses that's not curable, and it truly is totally debilitating. And that experience and that rage that I was feeling because of the way that she was treated as a consequence, um, it took me 4 days to write a single paragraph. And because I wanted to, because the beginning sentence, I know a few of them, but it's we contend justice is among our senses, but its chance conception in nature exposes our conceit when we sunder our marriage to reason for the profits of incurious vengeance. And then with other failings abundant, we proceeded still on the absurd quest to actualize our dream of the shining city, but dependably neglected to audit our compassion as we gave form to our laws and our principles in embryo. And then the last sentence, there's a whole bunch of it, then a whole bunch more, but it says justice and redemption are folly, but to seek them is not. That's how it ends. And that's my philosophy, is to live that justice and redemption. We will never be wholly achieved, but that doesn't mean we give it up.
Absolutely. I
Still have to
love
seek
that
it
what
out.
you just did. So let me ask you this, like, um, so like being that like you went through a lot growing up, right?
Hmm.
Like we we oftentimes go through stuff so that we can use our experiences to pour into the lives of others, right? Or like
Yeah.
that part of our purpose, or that's our purpose here on earth.
Hmm.
Have you reflected and thought about how you'll take your experiences to put forth and help those that are going through the same thing or have gone through the same thing?
Yeah, and you're part of it.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, right. And so my everything that I do, and especially because my work is the most important thing, but so one of the most important things that I needed to sustain in my work was that when you encounter a person in the book, it really felt truly like they were a human being and they weren't just some kind of device or every single that's what that so many people have told me that every single person in the book feels like a person, even the people that don't matter, like they're not relevant or instrumental to the story whatsoever. Like I have characters that are, I was in the military, you sing a lot of songs in the military. So there's a bunch of knights or soldiers and they're singing songs, and there's an older gentleman with his daughter sitting in the same room but at their own table and eating, and he's older and he knows some of the songs. He starts to sing them and he's entertaining his daughter who's like giggling at him, and it's what I'm saying is they're not part of the story at all, but there's a whole thing about them you learn about who they are. And I don't know, this just because so many people lose their humanity here on real Earth, right? It's so easy to dehumanize people. It's it's actually pretty terrifying. And sometimes it happens because of fatigue. Like there's so much, like people don't even, like there's nothing in the news about Ukraine anymore generally. Like nobody watches that, but there's still
you know, I literally was where was I at? I think this was like a day or two ago. I forgot what happened. Oh no, this was yesterday. I was walking down the street and like I passed somebody by on the you know, like walking past, and I'm just like, you know, I always try to speak to people, you know,
Mhm.
and it's just it's crazy how people don't even want to speak, or you know, just
Yeah,
how distant people are. And I literally said that out of my mouth yesterday. I'm like, oh my goodness, can we bring humanity back?
bro. It's weird. I was thinking about that actually too. On my way back from getting coffee this morning, I was thinking I just talked to the neighbor for the first. I've lived here like almost 2 months. I just spoke to my neighbor yesterday for the first time. I said howdy, and he said hello, and that was it. That's the first time we've spoken since I moved in, and I realized that everyone is trying to create their own paradise. Everyone is trying to create their, and it's a paradise that lives inside a bunker. That is what people are looking like, an emotional and physical and emotional fortress, like to shield them from like, oh my God, the world is a terrible, terrible, terrible place. I want little retinal scanners. I want I
Yeah.
want that kind of security. I want armed guards. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? They don't. Yeah, that's what everybody wants. They just want that, but that security is never going to be realized, you know.
Mhm.
And that's what it's going to drive us worse. Yeah,
Absolutely. And not to mention, like we're all interconnected, and
yep,
we just need to work our way back to community and just, you know, back to the basics.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I honestly think that we're in this weird period technologically where the way that we interface, like with a computer, like the way that we interact with them, they're not. It's not conducive to like actually socializing with other people. But I think once we have like enough people have ways to like actually remotely discuss. I mean, a lot of this stuff is like basically because women are afraid to get killed and stuff. So like they're not going out because it's easier to like sit on a dating app and figure out like is it gonna be like I'm gonna go meet someone and it's gonna be safe to do that. And so if the women aren't going out, then the men aren't going out. So you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
And then it's
That's
just this ongoing thing,
yeah,
like,
it's
you
yep.
know?
Yeah, and what's like here's what's gonna like this is what's happening now. The thing is it's a positive feedback loop in that these uh so many of these guys that would have been able to have like sort of incidental interactions with women like in a public place, like at a bar or something, they can't do that anymore. They don't get the practice. So like a lot like for me, I don't have a problem dating. But I just don't. But I know that a lot of guys do, and it's only making that worse. It's only exacerbating that problem because they can't even practice. They have to practice. Like doing this stuff in person is different from doing it over the phone. Even I
It
get nervous on dates. I'm like, oh god,
is.
no.
Yeah. So I got one more question for you. So if people, no, I got two questions for you. So if people want to find like some of your books, where do we find them at?
It's on Amazon or like you can Google my name, Christoph Morrow, and like so much stuff is gonna come up. Like there's a lot of different ones. So like yeah, and I also have a kids book that I wrote called Liam Earns a Friend, and that's also just like I priced it as low as I possibly could. So if you want it, that's my Christmas gift to the world. Is that
Uh,
it's actually a Christmas book. It's a Christmas story. Uh, yeah. Hmm.
that's what's up. And one last question. So if people want to work with you outside of this, how can they find you?
Oh, yeah. Uh, I all my social media, I actually check everything. So I'm very thorough, because I'm vain, you know? And I
Yeah,
want to, in fact, that's my poems. I remembered it. Bereft fortunes of grace or noble manners trained, my ego must impart, it cannot be restrained.
I like that. I like that. That was
Isn't that
real
fun?
smooth. I like
Yeah.
that. That was nice. That was really nice. I like
Thanks.
that.
Cool.
I really do. So are you on there as Christoph Morrow?
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Christoph Morrow. Christoph, and then the last half tomorrow. Honestly, yeah, I've gone viral a couple times actually, so I've been able to, I've been registered. My anonymity is dead forever. It's
Yeah.
dead for all of time. It's gone. Yeah, there's no going back. It's really funny.
Yeah.
No,
Well, I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story and being so transparent and just, putting it all out there. I really do appreciate that.
that was amazing. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. And you're welcome back anytime. Next time you on your next book that you put out, I want you to come back on and share with everyone and
Yeah,
give us the update.
I will. Yeah, I'm 90,000 word. I've written about the length of the Hobbit of my next book. So I'm making good progress.
That's good. Congratulations. Yeah, keep
Thanks.
writing, keep on writing, and keep sharing your story. You know, you never know what door will open in 2024 for you.
I know. Yeah, I'm gonna go after it. Mm.
That's what's up. Well, thank you guys for joining us here on Let the Healing Begin podcast. A couple ways to support. First things first. So I got a new announcement. So we just kicked off and launched an online women's community, where we will be bringing a bunch of new updates and things like that. We will be coming together for weekly mixers live. You can head over to www.healingisalifestyle.org. You can also, and once you're there, you can sign up for an online account and you will receive newsletters. You will be added into our group chat, Facebook group,
Hmm.
all that good fun stuff. You can
Mhm.
also head over to Amazon, purchase a copy of Back in My Day by Asia Wilson.
Hey.
You can also go to www.greatergrowthllc.com. And then last but not least, you can check out the link tree on the bottom of the page and check out our mentoring and life skill services. Thank you so much, and until next time.
Hmm.